Welcome back to SpaceX Daily, Episode 5. It's June 16th, 2026, and I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Here's what's happening at SpaceX today. Shotwell's one Starship-per-month target now depends on whether the new Florida pads can support the same rapid propellant loading and booster turnaround already proven at Starbase. Gwynne Shotwell stated the company aims for one Starship launch per month as infrastructure expands. The cadence goal directly tests whether booster catch, refurbishment, and reflight can close the loop faster than current test flight intervals. Florida coast work is cited as the key enabler for parallel operations with Texas. Listeners should watch the next integrated flight test for any indication that ground operations are scaling toward that monthly rhythm. That same test will also reveal whether the new pads can match Starbase propellant loading speeds. SpaceX launches 24 Starlink satellites into space on a Falcon 9 that used a previously flown booster with no new hardware variants. The June 16 mission continues the constellation's steady replenishment cadence. Direct-to-cell capability remains the next visible tranche milestone. Observers on X noted visible grid fin scorch marks on the booster after it returned to Port Canaveral. Independent trackers posted pre-dawn imagery of the new Florida Starship pad foundations, showing concrete pours completed within the last week. Several accounts shared orbital element data suggesting the next Starlink plane will sit slightly lower than the densest existing shells to reduce conjunction risk. A Falcon 9 upper stage section is projected to impact the lunar surface after its disposal burn. The trajectory follows standard geosynchronous transfer disposal practices that leave residual propellant and structure on a lunar intercept path. Impact timing and location remain subject to final tracking updates. Observers will compare the event with prior Falcon 9 lunar impacts for any pattern in disposal accuracy. Construction at Florida sites is adding pad infrastructure sized for Starship operations alongside existing Falcon pads. The work creates a second geographic node for vehicle processing and launch. Parallel sites reduce weather and range conflicts that currently limit Texas-only test flights. Attention now turns to whether the new pads receive environmental and range approvals on the same timeline as hardware deliveries. Vandenberg lists multiple Falcon 9 missions scheduled in the coming days. The manifest includes both national security and commercial payloads. Each flight continues the pattern of high reuse on the same booster fleet. Observers track whether any mission slips due to range or payload readiness. A Chinese low Earth orbit broadband project stated that SpaceX's constellation is occupying preferred altitude and inclination bands. The warning centers on long-term slot allocation under international coordination rules. No immediate regulatory action was detailed in the report. Future coordination meetings will determine whether additional planes can be added without interference objections. Amateur radio operators reported successful reception of direct-to-cell test beacons on frequencies previously allocated for the service. One thing worth watching is that China's broadband project warned SpaceX's rapid addition of planes is claiming the most desirable low-drag orbital shells before other operators can coordinate equivalent slots. The concern is that later entrants will face higher drag or more frequent collision avoidance maneuvers. Resolution depends on whether international frequency and orbital coordination bodies impose new sharing rules or accept the current distribution. On the AI front, the federal government is treating xAI's data center as a national security asset, according to reporting that links the Memphis cluster to broader Musk ecosystem infrastructure priorities. The designation raises questions about how power allocation and export controls may affect future co-location of compute with SpaceX ground stations. No specific GPU counts or contract values were released in the coverage. From an engineering standpoint, monthly Starship cadence requires ground systems that can load more than 1,200 tons of cryogenic propellant in under an hour while maintaining thermal margins on the booster. The physics constraint is heat transfer during fast fill because any vapor lock or pressure spike forces a scrub and resets the clock. Florida's new pads are being sized with larger feed lines and parallel vent stacks precisely to shrink that fill time versus the current Texas configuration. If the design holds, the same booster could fly again within days rather than weeks, collapsing the dominant cost driver from propellant and engines to only the marginal refurbishment labor. That reduction is what turns one launch per month from a slogan into a repeatable operational tempo. The same principle already appears in Falcon operations, where quick turnaround has moved the cost focus from hardware replacement to inspection labor. Starship's larger thermal mass adds an extra variable because heat soak during loading can create localized boiling that the parallel vents must handle without back pressure waves. Larger feed lines reduce flow velocity and therefore frictional heating, while the parallel stacks provide independent paths for vapor relief so the system can stay within pressure limits even at peak fill rates. Once those margins are proven, the limiting factor becomes how quickly crews can inspect and refurbish the vehicle, rather than how long it sits waiting for propellant. And a quick market note, SPCX closed at $160.95. Before we go, watch the next integrated flight test for the first signs that Florida ground systems are matching the Texas turnaround times already demonstrated. That's the day at SpaceX. That's a wrap. SPCX closed at $160.95. If you're new here, subscribe, and this briefing finds you every day. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow. And before you go, this show is part of the Narra Network, a family of daily podcasts covering tech, science, markets, and more. If you enjoyed today's episode, give OmniView a listen, a balanced daily world news briefing that takes every side seriously. You can explore the whole lineup at narranetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.